You know, I really love it when companies are proactive. We have been fairly critical of some pre-built websites in the past, maybe the products they offer, the lack of specificity, the list goes on. But when a company sends a product just kind of off the cuff and says, hey, we trust our product, we think it's priced competitively, and we think the quality is top notch, will you give it an independent review? Of course, I can't turn that down. So we've got another pre-built here. This is from a company called Optimal Text. I've linked them below. And the build specifically is called the Dark Gaming 1600, priced a little under 700 USD as of time of filming. We're gonna open this thing up, check out how it was packaged, make sure it was all packaged, appropriately given the weight of the system. And then we will run through the parts. We'll see how competitive the system is given the parts that are inside of it, and then we'll see how the system performs. All of that coming very soon. Stay with me. The Dark Power Pro 12 is the most efficient power supply Be Quiet's ever built, with its 80+ titanium rating, digital control, and frameless Silent Wings fan. A fully modular layout helps keep builds clean, and individually sleeved cables help keep things classy. And it's all packaged with Be Quiet's mammoth 10-year manufacturer warranty. Learn more about the Dark Power Pro 12 below. So let's get this thing open. You'll notice it was shipped via UPS. Let's see here, it's taped up quite a bit. The box is fairly large given the system inside. And we've got some bubble wrap. This is bubble wrap, right? What do they call this? Okay, so right away, we've got, what is this? Display cable or power cable? Yep, power cable for the power supply. We've got, I don't know what this is. I guess it's for the RGB strip that's included. Let's see. How's it packaged? We got the ice pack in there, or whatever it's called, a little inflatable pack. That's what I'm looking for. See, I'm not seeing that expandable pack, and that's disappointing because the graphics card is pretty much just allowed to kind of shake around it. It's only being held by the motherboard and these two screws at the rear. Granted, it's not a very large card, but still, I'd like to see it include that expansion pack. You know, UPS, FedEx, you name them, they're all gonna kind of toss these things around. Even if you've got the word fragile written every 2 inches on the box, they're still gonna toss these things into the trucks. I've seen it happen before. I've seen it happen in my personal builds, even with UPS specifically. I've even got good friends that work at UPS, and I'm still willing to say that. So, just bear that in mind. That's why it never hurts to go the extra mile when it comes to full-on systems like this. Now, this is a tempered glass panel that comes with the Thermaltake case. It swings wide open, and system doesn't look too bad. One thing I did notice, though, PCIe supplemental power is not connected. Now, it's not difficult to reconnect this. So we pretty much fixed the issue already just by clipping this in. But that could be, I mean, like if you're gonna buy a pre-built, you might not know what's wrong with your system when it doesn't post or when you don't get a picture, and that's exactly what would happen if this wasn't connected. And again, if this came loose during shipping, all the more reason to package it very nice and tight so that things aren't wiggling around too much. Now let's check out cable management at the rear, something that people tend to overlook when buying pre-builts. A lot of times these companies will cut corners. Did Optimal Text? No, I'd say this is actually quite nice considering what they were working with. They have zip ties pretty much everywhere, and looks like they just went out of their way to clean things up where they could. You've even got this controller here, and it's difficult to route these a lot of times, so I think this is actually pretty good. So let's talk about what's actually in this system here. So we got a Thermaltake S100. This is a black tempered glass case. It looks like airflow is gonna be rather restricted, but because we're not going with super high-end components, I don't think it's gonna be too big an issue. May run a bit hotter, a tad bit louder, but again, nothing super detrimental, I imagine. The Ryzen 5 1600 is a CPU of choice in this build, as well as an RX 570 for the graphics card. It looks like it's an Asus, or excuse me, not Asus, it's a Phantom Gaming from ASRock, interestingly enough. 16 gigs of DDR4 at 3200 megahertz. These are T-Force Vulkan Z modules. These are some of the cheapest 16 gig kits you can buy, but they're still great from Team Group. And then we've got a 500 gig M.2 NVMe SSD. We'll be sure to test out how fast that actually is. It's NVMe, so I imagine pretty sweet speeds, faster than just a standard SATA SSD. And then a 500 watt 80 plus white certified PSU is how they describe it on their website. And it looks like it's the 500 watt from EVGA, which is a perfectly fine PSU for a build like this. I'm glad that it's nowhere near as bad as some of the pre-built options in stores like Best Buy. I've seen Best Buy pre-built have like the worst PSUs that you can imagine, just like from brands that have no place in the PSU space for builds of that caliber with not even an 80+ rating. Yeah, so this is nice. EVGA, 500 watt, no problem there, tried and true unit. By the way, these RGB fans here, optional add-ons. So this config that you're looking at, I believe, brings things up to $715 as of time of filming. But if you opt for the standard black fan config, I'm not even sure how many of those fans you'll get, but I wouldn't be surprised if they cut back to just 1 or 2 fans. You're only gonna pay $675-ish US dollars. I didn't realize the storage drive was exposed. I can tell you right now what it is. It's a 500 gig WD Blue SN550 NVMe SSD. This is good for reads up to about 2,500 megabytes per second and writes somewhere in the realm of like 1,800 megabytes per second. We'll be sure to test to verify that, but this is going off of several reviews online already. So this isn't a bad drive, and in a $600-700 system, for around 50-60 bucks, I think this is a really good investment. And one of the first tests I wanted to run was Cinebench R20. You can see our overall score there, just under 2,500 points, which is okay. Remember, the original Zen architecture is going to be very memory dependent. Actually, all of Ryzen is memory dependent, but Zen was never the best when it came to higher frequency RAM kits with tighter timings. You're gonna struggle usually to get anything above 2666 megahertz or so, and especially with a more stripped down board like this, I think compatibility across the board is going to be a bit of a letdown. So, Ryzen 5 1600 is a great value, but this is one of the trade-offs you're going to experience, and then also single core performance. Just a result of the first revision of Zen architecture as well, not going to be the greatest. On top of that, it's not like we can overclock very far because we're on the stock cooler. The next test we ran was 3D Mark TimeSpy. This is a 1440p DX12 benchmark, so it's going to be a bit rough on a system that only has an RX 570 in it. But you can see from our usages on the left side of the screen that the graphics card was pretty much the bottleneck throughout every test here, except for the last test, the physics test, was going to stress the CPU more than anything. But in most games, you will find that with this combination of hardware, the Ryzen 5 1600 and an RX 570, it will be the latter, the graphics card, that will bottleneck most of your games. And to sum this up even better, you can see how this system stacks up against the competition, better than only 29% of all results with a score of just under 4,000 in TimeSpy. That speaks volumes, I think, for a system of this caliber, or a system I should say in this price range. We would expect it to perform a bit better than just 29% of the total scores here. So a bit of a letdown. I think that I'm starting to realize how detrimental the RX 570 is in a system like this. For a $700 budget, we could squeeze in something much more competitive than a single RX 570. By the way, while TimeSpy was running, I went ahead and took a quick sound measurement, and somewhere around 42, 43 dBA. Quite a loud system, but it's also a testament to the fact that they've gone again with the stock cooler for the 1600 AF. Also the RX 570, it's not very beefy. The shroud is fairly small, so the fans need to turn a bit faster to compensate. So I'd say so far, kind of a mixed bag. The system is a bit less powerful than I would expect in a $600 to $700 system, and that's due in large part to the use of the RX 570 there. You could fit an RX 570 into a $300 budget. I've done it before. So that card at this point can really be stretched into much lower budgets. For $600 to $700, I know off the top of my head because I've built so many systems in that price range, especially with recent hardware, I know what I can squeeze into that budget, and it's going to be a card that's much more powerful, and you can still stick with the same CPU. So we're going to swing on over to PC Part Picker to explain that a bit better. So I tried to be as by the books as possible with the specs of this system on PC Part Picker. I couldn't find the Ryzen 5 1600 for anything reasonable. I think it was marked up by a third-party reseller like $200, which is not worth it. You can get the Ryzen 5 2600, so a generation newer, for 150 bucks, and I've even seen it cheaper than that at times. And I'm trying to stick with new parts for this build just to be consistent with the pre-built seller. Obviously, if you're in this price range, buying used, you're gonna get way better value there. But Ryzen 5 2600, 150 bucks, and then the Asus Prime B450M, $78. We've got the RAM, we've got the same storage drive, the same graphics card, the same case, and the same power supply. It brings our total to 611 or so US dollars shipped. Now here's the problem I have with this system. Right, on the surface, the total price here isn't far off from what Optimal Text is charging for the pre-built, but The way by which they've configured this system, right, pairing a Ryzen 5 1600 with an RX 570, I think that these cards, I'm not sure if they're buying these new or used, but I'm not a fan of spending 150 bucks for an RX 570 in a $600 or $700 system. To me, that doesn't make any sense. So what I did was I put together my own kind of PC part picker list from new parts, keeping around the same budget. So I went with the Ryzen 3 3100. This is only a quad-core processor, 2 less than the 1600, but 2 generations newer in terms of the Ryzen architecture. This is Zen 2 here, so you're gonna get much better RAM compatibility, which is also gonna boost core efficiency, and then you're also gonna get higher clocks overall as well. So it's $123, $124 for this one on Amazon, and then we've got the same B450 motherboard. We'll have to flash to the latest BIOS to make sure this is compatible with Zen 2, obviously. And the same kit of RAM will be able to actually use the full 3200 megahertz, mind you. I actually went for a cheaper Team Group 512 gig SSD. This one I believe is just a SATA SSD, which is why it's a bit cheaper. But I don't think that prioritizing super fast NVMe storage in a build of this caliber makes much sense. You're not really gonna notice much of a difference. Even from game load times to boot times, those are all gonna seem fairly fast either way. The GTX 1660 Ti, I found that for 240 bucks on Newegg. And then the Rosewell SRM01B, that's weird, micro ATX case, $33. I don't think you should be spending more than 10% of your total budget in a $600 budget on your case. So that's why I went with a cheap case here. And our build's not gonna look pretty or anything either, so we don't need a left side panel. And then the same 500 watt 80 plus power supply from EVGA that I've used many times, tried and true. So about the same price, 616 bucks. This, in my opinion, is it's not even an opinion, it's actually a fact. This is a much better system for gaming. Period. And because the Ryzen 3 3100 is relying on much newer architecture from AMD, you might even find similar just raw compute performance in this 4-core versus the 6-core from 2 or 3 years ago. Plus, this GTX 1660 Ti is going to absolutely slay in 1080p and 1440p, whereas the RX 570, not so much. The 1660 Ti is anywhere between a 20 to 40% improvement in frame rates over the RX 570. And that's just in my testing. So a much better card there. I think the prioritization of hardware definitely needs to be looked at in this build that Optimal Techs offers. I just think that an RX 570 and a $700 system, it doesn't really make sense. So this particular system, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, and I have to be, that's my role as an independent reviewer, is not one that I would recommend. I think that the price, it's a good price point for an entry-level gaming PC, something, obviously you could build cheaper entry-level gaming PCs, but a good starter usually is gonna be around $500 to $700, but the components that you're getting for the price, they don't add up to me. The RX 570 needs to be bumped up to something that's a bit more modern, frankly a bit more efficient, and significantly more powerful for me to want to recommend the system. Nothing wrong with the Ryzen 5 1600. I think that it has its place in this price segment, but the graphics card is the big letdown. And I think that you could either trim back on the case or trim back on the storage, or both in order to make that happen. So I think that Optimal Techs needs to revise the way that they've structured this build, the way they've priced some of these components out. I'm not sure how much inventory they're sitting on, but I'm assuming it's not going to be very much. If you can get through this last round of RX 570s, or maybe repurpose these in cheaper pre-builds, maybe you'll offer. Get this card up to something like a 1660, 1660 Super, or Ti. Keep the same CPU, and then maybe cheap out a bit on the case. I hate to say that, but really aesthetics shouldn't be a huge priority of yours in this price range. Then I think you'll have a compelling offer in this price range, in the $600 to $700 category. So thank you guys for watching. Leave your feedback in the comment section below, what you'd like to see extra added to this build, maybe swapped out. Remember, they've got the Windows retail key to worry about. They've got their time, their labor going into the build. They've also got the shipping aspect of this, which I haven't even looked at. I'm gonna put right here how they handle shipping, but I'm sure they're gonna make you pay extra for that. That tends to be how pre-builds handle things. Anyway, this one was kind of a mixed bag. I'd like to see a bit more done to this before I can recommend it to you guys. But thanks to Optimal Techs for being willing to send this out, for being transparent about the prices, about the build itself. And hopefully here in a few months we can see another build from them that maybe is a bit better value that I can recommend. Okay, so this is a little weird. I was about to start editing and I realized that the CPU in here is not actually what you think it is. So it's a Ryzen 5 1600, but not just a regular old 1600, it's a 1600AF, which means it's actually based on Zen Plus architecture, 12 nanometers, it says so right here in CPU-Z. And that totally slipped my mind because I saw 1600, just plain old 1600 on the website. I also saw 1600 in Cinebench, and it never crossed my mind that this would be the AF model. That said, again, I had a bigger issue with the graphics card, not the CPU. The fact that it's a 1600 AF is actually quite nice. It's an extra little bonus, but I'm still sticking to my guns on the whole graphics card budget allocation issue. I think that the money could have been better spent in this budget. So yeah, just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not sure if that was something that any of you noticed. I don't think you would have. You would have just taken my word for it because that's all it said anywhere else. But yeah, something that I discovered right before I edited, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. Anyway, thanks again to Optimal Text for giving us a chance to review this build, and hopefully in the future, again, we can review something that maybe is a bit better buy, and I have no doubt that you guys will kind of tweak things as you see fit to make the sale. All right, thank you guys for watching this part of the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.